Hi everyone, Sandra here at Homesteading Ways, and today we're going to be canning squash. And when I'm talking about squash, I mean winter squash, the kind with the hard shell on it. So butternut, acorn, pumpkin, because yes, pumpkin is part of the squash family. So anyhow, the first thing you're going to do, okay, besides getting your canner started, because squash is a low acid, you're going to have to pressure can this. So go ahead and get your jars set up in your canner with the water and just have them, barely simmer and just, with some hot water in there. Because the first part here is the most labor intensive and it's going to take a few minutes. I'm using that term loosely to get this done. So in here, I've already pre-done it because you're not going to want to watch me, trying to peel butternut squash. I have it set up here though to show you a little bit. When I do the butternut squash, I like to do it in sections rather than try and peel it whole because it's so dense and so hard to cut through. It's just not easy to do it like that. So I cut them into pieces. This is a part of a neck here. And then, do this. And use a sharp knife. Because even with a really sharp knife, it's going to be hard to get through this. So a dull knife would make it even harder. It'll take more time and you run the risk of really hurting yourself. So you're going to just spin it around here. You can get through it fairly quick, and make sure to save all your seeds. Those roast up beautifully, just like pumpkin seeds. They taste great. But if you don't want to roast them, you can give them to your chickens or your goats. They really like them. Okay, that was quick. Okay, and so then I'm going to cut it in half here. See? Yowzers. And you're going to cut them in roughly 1-inch pieces. And I said roughly because, with squash, depending on the type, who knows what you'll end up with. And you want to use a squash that's not very stringy. So you're not going to can spaghetti squash. You're going to want to can something like the butternut or the acorn. And when you're doing pumpkins, try and do something like a sugar pie pumpkin because those are less stringy. And we're just going to put them here in the bowl. Now this is about, well, I don't know, I didn't weigh them out, but I did 2 medium size and 1 small butternut here. Roughly, they say about 10 pounds for 9 pints. Now, I'm not doing a full 9 pints. I'm just looking at doing about 6. That's what I'm hoping to get. So, that's just rough measurements, and that is the squash in its entirety. So, like before you peel it. So, you're not going to, try and weigh them once they're cut up. But anyhow, once you have them cut into their pieces, then we're going to move on to the next step. Alright, the next step is we have to blanch the cubes. So I'm just going to grab a few handfuls, whoops, and get them in there. Do it gently. Make sure your water's boiling, a hard boil, because you want this to continue to boil right away. We're going to blanch these for about 2 minutes. You don't want to go too much past that though, because they're going to continue to cook, as you know, once they're in the canner. And I'm trying to put just enough in here that would go in 1 jar. Because as soon as I pull them out of here, I'm going to put them directly in the canning jar. And so I think this is about as much as we'll need for 1 jar, and then we'll continue on. So I'm going to set my timer right now to 2 minutes. Okay, the timer's gone off, so we're going to get these out of here and into the jar. Now you don't need salt or anything else. You're just going to put it straight in there. And you know, you really should pick up as much squash as you can at this time of year. In fall and early winter is when there's a plethora of it. So if you haven't grown it yourself, I'm sure you can get a good deal on it at the farmer's market or even your local grocery store. So alright, we're gonna, it looks like maybe a little too much, because what we're looking for here is an inch headspace, and that looks like maybe a little too much. Alright, now we're going to add our boiling liquid in there. And get some of them air bubbles out. And check our headspace again. That looks about good. So, we'll wipe down these rims real quick. Put our lid on and our ring and move on to the next jar. Okay, I ended up with 8 pints instead of 6, but that's great for me. And another thing is, in order to measure these better, after that first jar, I took an empty pint jar, filled it up with some cubed up squash, and then that's how I measured it better into the boiling water to blanch it. Then that way I didn't end up with any leftovers. I had just the right amount to go into each pint. And the next thing I want to mention real quick is just for you guys to remember that the Department of Agriculture says this is the only safe way to can squash or pumpkin. You can't can it mashed or pureed. It may not be safe, and it's not worth that risk of botulism. So anyhow, once you have your jars in the canner, go ahead and get your lid on. And if you have you can get the lid on, huh? I'll come up here today. If you have a dial gauge canner like I do, you're going to do 11 pounds at 55 minutes. If you have a weighted canner, then it's 10 pounds at 55 minutes. Okay, they are out of the canner and looking good. So the next time you have a need for some squash, it'll be sitting there waiting for you to use it. Just drain the liquid and you'll be ready to go. Thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe if you're not a subscriber. That would be great of you. As always, it was nice talking to you. And you take care.